Wise man once said, "We'll do alive." Welcome back for another edition of our can.JS training series with Bitovi. We are all in Chicago this week for a Bitovi gathering. With me on this week's podcast is Curtis Cummings. I'm trying to point and look on camera. I don't know which way you guys see it on your side. Curtis Cummings, Mikhail Konjevic, and David Luke, the core lead on can.js. They're going to talk about a few things. We're going to multi-camera it. If I tilt my camera just slightly, now David is twice on your screen. Interesting conversations we were leading up to this podcast. We're talking about routing. What I'm going to take a slightly different approach, different format since we have so many people on this week's cast. But I'll talk just a couple minutes on the history of routing, where routing came from, why this is even a thing, why frameworks introduced this as a really must-have feature in the ecosystem. So let's go back in time a bit. I'm going to share my screen with everybody here. Come on, Hangouts. Okay. My screen showing up for you guys? I'll take that as a yes. Sorry, I wasn't looking at you guys. Okay. So I have a simple HTML page. Don't worry about the Steel script yet. That's for a demo we're about to do. But a long, long time ago, when the internet was just for, or a web page was just for creating and reading documents, you could potentially have segments of content, text, that are very far down the page. So you could have a link or an anchor tag, this is where the name came from, that anchors that link to that segment of text. So in this case, I clicked a link and the page scrolled down to where it says hello, somewhere really, really far down the page. You can see the history was also modified, so if I wanted to go back in time, I wouldn't actually leave the page, but it would modify the history and refresh and go back to the top and re-scroll to. This is a very, very simple mechanic, but this is one of two things that led to just having this knowledge of saying, hey, we have a way to modify history of a browser without actually leaving the page. This is one of two. Ajax, or at the time ActiveX Object, was one of the other things that let us create rich client-side experiences. So this workaround came about where we said, hey, using this syntax, this hash and then an ID scrolls you to this page, what if we had a commonly accepted pattern to where we could modify the state of a page without actually scrolling at all? You can actually use anything. We could just use foo targets. We can say just have IDs that don't exist on the page. But instead, we came up with bang. So if you've ever seen hash bang and wondered where this came from, this is just a common pattern accepted in the industry. It says, hey, you're probably not naming your DOM elements ID bang target. Now, if I did this, if I did name it bang target, we would get the same exact behavior. We'd click a link and it would scroll. And you would see hash bang target. Typically, people don't use that character in front of their IDs. And as a result, I click this link, we get a state change, we get a history addition in our browser's history collection, but we did not scroll. So you're able to change state within the history of a browser without leaving. This is really nice if you wanted to pop open a modal and you wanted to go back, or if you wanted to, let's say you had a paginated grid and you wanted to click through different pages of your grid without leaving the page and go back in time without having any kind of crazy scrolling effects or postbacks. Those that came from any JSP or ASP world know what postbacks I'm talking about. This is where it kind of came from. The tricky part next is, hey, we have a lot of information, a lot of state we're just shoving up here in the address bar. How do we access this? How do we maintain this? I could do a quick demo here, or David, would you like to take over, talk about how can.js approaches, how do we manage this state, or I'm using my air quotes here, state on this address bar?
I can start. I was still working on the
Setting up a demo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Not a problem.
Muted. You probably hear me over there.
Yeah.
Probably still muted.
Yeah, give me two. Well, I guess give me 2 minutes.
Okay. So what David's working on, he's bringing up a little demo with can.js. I can show you where this kind of leads. I already have can on the page, which is nice. But in this case, now we can, let's say you're working with a paginated grid. So maybe you have a link that says, go to page 2. So we have page equals 2 on this state. Now, there's a number of ways you can get this information out. We could just say, hey, window.location, and then parse, the href string and try to get the information we want out of it. Typically, you want some kind of tool or library that does this all for you. So can.js comes with something called can.route, which is a really easy way. I'm not going to show you some of the cool stuff we can do with it yet, but a really easy way to retrieve and set information. I'm going to call a can.route from the console here. Can.route ready. This is just something you have to say at the initialization of any application, any can.js application where you're manipulating routes. This is the point where I'm done setting things up and I'm ready to start manipulating the route in some way, getting information or setting information, either way. I'm just saying I'm ready to start doing stuff. Now, what I really care about is, hey, I want to know this page. What parameter are we looking for? And I want to know its value. That's what I'm really trying to check here. can.route.adder is going to be what retrieves this. This is going to retrieve the object based. Basically, if you've seen a jQuery param, you can take a URL encoded string, or excuse me, an object, and turn it into a URL encoded string. Can has dparam, which takes a URL encoded string and turns it into a set of key value pairs. So we get this nice object page with a value 2 out of this crazy string up here, which is really, really nice. If you're watching this for the first time, welcome. Take a look at the talks we did. It must have been maybe 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, where we were talking about can map and the define plugin. Can.route is actually just a map. So you see .adder here. You'll see .adder in a lot of places in can.js, but this is just an object, an observable object we have, but it's a representation of what you see in the address bar. Just like you can create a new map with your own arbitrary properties, your own arbitrary values, this is a map that is tied to the address bar and all the key values there. How's the demo going?
Okay, you can help me debug it.
All right. I'm going to flip my screen over here to David. I'm going to take over for a little bit. Stop my screen share. And I'll throw myself on mute. David, do you want to share your screen and unmute yourself?
You should see my screen, and I should not be muted. All right, so let's start with how in can.js. So the difference is, and it's a little different way of thinking about it, is that in can.js, your route is just an observable object. So you can do something can.route.adder page, and then say home, right? And what it will do in the end is create a URL that looks kind of like this, page equals home. But when you change the adder, the URL will update. If the URL changes, the adder will update. So we could technically just show this in our template and say, okay, we'll render this with the route. And then we can say here, say route.page. That should give us the page. Come on. And what we always have to do in can.js is, once we're ready to go, is tell it that we set up all our routes ready. So now the page is home, and the URL is, this is the problem with JS, we talked about this. You can't see it because it's running in an iframe, but trust me, the page is home. So if we want to link in a link you just say this is a new helper route URL 2.3, and then you say I want to set this state on my route. So you can say page equals, I don't know, log. So now this is just a normal link, right? If you look at this, this is just a link that creates this URL. So there's nothing magical about it. And if you click this, because can.route, our can.route object and the URL are bound to each other, you'll see that the page just changed here. That we output here. Is this too small? Is this big enough? Okay. So that's actually really helpful, and it is quite different than other web frameworks where you say, okay, you have this route, and if you have this route, then do, oopsie. If you have like the /home route, then do this, right? And for us, we just say we have this page attribute, and we want this to be certain properties. Now, one thing we want to do is format this nicely. Like if you see this down here, right, you have page equals and ampersand page equals blog. That's kind of not very pretty, but what we can do is actually set the formatting and say, okay, we have, you know, a slash and then the page property, and we could add something like ID, and then you would have URLs like home 10, something like that. We only want the page right now, so it kind of looks like this. And the nice thing is I don't have to change anything in my code. But if I run this and look at this URL again, didn't work. That's what I wanted to try before somebody helps me debug. Oh, there, it didn't update. So now if I run this and look at the URL, you see that it's /blog instead of page equals blog. So you can get nicely formatted routes without having to change any of your application, and I think that's very powerful. Maybe Miha has more to say about that. I think that's a super powerful way to think about your state first and then kind of put your pretty URLs in as an afterthought. And, that's definitely what CanJS has always been doing quite different. And everything now is pretty much template driven. So if you have two URLs here, let's say you have home page, and the blog.
Your link is kind of like /home is closing tag.
Oh, you're right. It still worked. Thanks. That's probably okay. So I have two routes, and then you can just use mustache, looking for the page, and say, okay, if the page is home, then show.
It should be route.page.
Is it route? Yeah, you're right. Thank you. You could just pass this, but it's probably better. Route.page if it's home, and we say home page.
You have to close the home.
What do I need to close? Oh yeah, I see it. That's what we do pair programming for. So you see here, you just get the two different pages, and you get those two different URLs that we. So this is /blog and this is /home. To get even nicer URLs, there's one thing we can do, which is import can push state plugin. Is it push state or can.route push state? So the push state is like a new browser spec. Let's look at the release. So here you get a new overview of all our releases, and you can link to them. Push state, can.route push state. So we need this. Can.route push state, which is cool because now we get nice URLs in the browser without the bang exclamation mark thing. So you just need to include that plugin and you get nice URLs. Only works in newer browsers. I don't know about which version of IE. And then, yeah, if you want different components here, all you do is just say, okay, well, here in this case, let's initialize the first component. And then in the other case, show the block. And you can do whatever you want in there. And we can use for more complex routing rules, we can use nested switch statements. But with the equals helper, it's actually really nice right now. And everything now is template and state driven. And your actual URL routes are just like an afterthought. You can, if you want to have something, this hi page, well, no problem. Just change this. Look at it. It updated automatically. So that's pretty powerful, pretty cool. And if you've ever changed 100,000 links in an app, you know that it's pretty painful. Do we have anything else to show? I can code away.
No, actually, what I'd like you to illustrate, if you could, is you mentioned this is way nicer than trying to say in a lot of other frameworks where you say, hey, this route needs to do this thing. Can you illustrate what that is? What it would look like? We don't need to like import another framework right now.
Yeah, so what's pretty common is in, for example, like Express, you would do something like, and with server-side frameworks it's different because they are request-based, but with client-side frameworks are state-based. So it's quite a different approach of how you have to think about your app. We would do something like, okay, app.use/home, right? And then you say function, and then you do something here, say load the initialize, set the state or whatever, set state. So this is how this would look. And then if you wanted to change what we just did, right, then you'd have to do, if you want to do a route, then here you have to have a helper that knows about all the routes, or you hard code it, right? You just say, /home. And if you want to do something like what we did up here, you would have to go, okay, now I have to go and add this here, and then I have to add it here, right? And then I have to add it for every other link, and that, bless you.
Thank you.
And that is that is frustrating. It's very frustrating. If you have to do this 10 times already, right? Because sometimes stuff changed in a way where you can't just do a global find and replace, and it's just, this makes it so easy and nice that it's routing is like how URLs look is kind of just an afterthought.
Awesome.
Which it should be.
Awesome. So this is pretty cool. I see you using .adder. We just said can.route is this kind of map setup. One of my favorite parts about map is being able to use the define plugin to define behaviors on what a map is doing. Is there a way we can use the define plugin here for routes?
Okay, well, let's try it. So you can create an application state, right? We say can map extend. So we say our whole application state or app state can map. App state is can map extend. Are we including the define plugin? Yes. So we say define. What would you like to do?
Cool code.
Oh, thank you. You're my code reviewer. What we want to do?
Yeah.
Any ideas? I don't know.
That's a good question. Maybe if you set page...
Let's say page ID, and then if the ID isn't set, we set it to number 10. Maybe. So we, although there was
just make an array of values, and then based on the ID, just bring the value from the.
Oh, we say we have like pages. We have like a list of pages. Yeah, okay. So when we say like pages, and then we have a setter with doing too much ES6 value, and then we say return value dot split, comma. That should work. So let's say we have a comma separated list of pages that we want. Let's take this out. And then you can actually say can.route.map. And first we have to instantiate it, so var state equals new app state. Typo. And then we just say can.route map state, so it means that this app state instance is bound to the maps for everything that's happening in the route, bound to route. So everything that happens in the route will also be updated here. And then we could say, yes. We could say, what's a good way to do this? All right, here. So first we're going to print out pages. No, we got to iterate over pages because that's an array. And then we print out the current page. And then if you have a URL that kind of looks like 1, 2, 3, it should show us. I got an error. What do we get here? No, it doesn't work because I didn't pass the app state. So if you actually pass the app state, you see that this converted the pages list from our URL, comma separated list, into an actual array right away. So that worked. So recap, we created an application state, which is what you usually almost always want to do, which defines how your initial application, like your application works and all the properties that it needs from the URL. And then you map it to the route, define your routes, and then here we can use setters and getters, like we did talk about the define plugin, I think 2 weeks ago, and convert things really, really easily. And this would probably be a little nicer if you say if type of value string, right? So if it's a string, split it, otherwise just set it. So a little bit of tweaking, but there we go. It worked.
Nice. Curtis, Mikhail, and Dave, what do you guys think about routing as is? We've done this for a long time. I came from Sinatra before this and .NET before that. Initially, can routing, before can.route ready was, when can.route ready was automatic, I had a lot of problems with can routes being set up before I needed them to be. What do you guys think about can.route in its state today? Ugly parts, good parts? What are your thoughts?
I think, in my opinion, that can.route is probably the best abstraction for routing for client-side applications. And I think that there is a big difference between how you have to approach routing on server side and on the client side, because on the server side you always basically deal with resources, and on client side you often have multiple types of resources shown in the same page at the same time. So you have to be able to express, basically to serialize your whole application state into a route. Another thing that's very trivial with CanJS, but it's really hard with other routing systems, is representing non-hierarchical routes. So basically, there are cases when you have like a master detail page, and you want to express that in a route, but there's not really very strict hierarchy set there, because there are cases where, for instance, if you have inbox / ID of the email message, there is a possibility that at some point in the future that email message is not in the inbox anymore, so that there is no strict hierarchy between those two panels. And if you do represent as a hierarchy, you're basically representing your state in the wrong way. So something just using like the URL encoded string as a router makes more sense because it's stricter representation of your application state, which I really like. And whenever I do applications with can.js, I define my pretty routes at the end because I don't really care about them until I have deep knowledge of how my application works, and I can just slap them on top of everything and just continues working. So in a way, can.route allows us to treat routing like CSS treats HTML, just applying the layer of like looks on top of the good structure. So that's the best part I like about can.route.
The part that David and you both touched on that I really like is you model your application state first. And you can build your entire app pretty much without even caring about routing, and then you can add it after the fact and just say, use can.route map, hook your app state to your routing, and now you've got your URLs. So you don't focus on defining a bunch of URLs, you focus on what state do I need to make my app work. And you can actually, we didn't show it in the demo, but maybe David can after, but if you've got a lot of stuff in your app state that you don't want in the URL, maybe there's some unimportant stuff, there's a way to do that. So everything gets serialized to the URL, but there's certain parts that maybe don't affect the actual page you're on or the thing you want to show. You can actually exclude those. So
that's a good example. Would we be able to demo that? Nice.
I should probably share my screen again. All right, so what Curtis was talking about is that, well, if you say console log window location hash, well, let's say we say can.route on change, right? Whenever our route changes, we're going to log the window location hash because I can't show it. ASPIN is really nice, but because this runs in an iframe, we don't really see the URL that it's running on. So we're just going to do window location, I think, hash.
There is a push state for hash work.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Location.
Yeah, you're right. And again, and then, oh, can.route bind change. Window look. Why didn't this like my... Why can't we look at it? Any insights?
Try to add a white space to the HTML area.
Oh, you think it didn't reload?
Yeah, sometimes JSPen doesn't, it caches like the response, or caches the JavaScript.
No, that can.route bind. Change. Well,
Oh, it's maybe logging into its own console.
yeah, but it's not there. Okay, well, let's just bind to app state change. Change. Console log window application. That will make it to string 2, right? No, it doesn't work at all anymore. I'm just trying to find a good way to to show how the URL looks like. You may have to skip
Stop
this
the
part.
console and just enter window application.
Yeah, you're right. So if I change this, I don't know what. I think I put a typo in here somewhere. I'm wondering if I put a typo here somewhere or something, because now it's not. It doesn't like me at all anymore. We may have to skip this example because I don't know what's going on. This used to work, right? 5 minutes ago.
The push state's still proper URL.
There is no push state. Yes.
I just took it out.
Yeah.
But your address is now.
Oh, thanks, Curtis. You are completely correct. Okay, I might have to stick with push date. Yeah, thank you. So window dot location. How do I get the actual string? Window dot location.
Well, you want path name, right?
Path href.
Path name. I mean, href will be the full thing, but path name will be the.
Oh,
that part.
there. Okay. So this is how it looks right now. Good. We're saved. Let's try this again. We wanted to, Curtis, you wanted to do what?
Serialized false.
Serialized false.
Serialized false, yeah. So basically, if we would do something like this and said ID and or maybe some prop and set the value to high and run this. It will.
Should probably use the route URL helper.
Yeah.
Manually setting up.
Yeah. So we say, okay, here, route URL pages 1, 2. So it looks right now looks like this. When does this actually happen? I think we changed it to not serialize.
So I should just.
It should just add it, right?
Yeah.
So this is the
For those watching, what David's actually trying to do is break this own app.
because it's actually working right now. Dang it. We may have to like skip this one because I don't have a good example for how this would look. Basically, the idea is as soon as you map your route to your state, all the properties in here are going to show up in your route. And usually you don't want that, and then you can just say here serialize false, and it won't be serialized into the URL. But for some reason, for some reason, it's runner. There's probably a JS bin thing then, because we're not getting
Now
the.
you can take a push date.
I think.
So you're using route URL helper.
Okay, we'll take a push date and see window.location. We can now use the hash, so it's not nothing. Oh, there, finally. Okay, so this is what we actually wanted to show, is that you see how it appends the and sum prop equals high to the URL because it's part of our state, right? Everything that's in there will be serialized. Now, you probably don't want that in this case, so we can just say serialize false, and if you rerun it, you only get this. And if you say don't serialize pages, then this will never turn. Yeah, this will never turn into URL. But this is how you can like get a little more freedom over what data are important for your app state and which one are computed or not necessary.
Awesome. That was a good pointer. Sweet. So in summary, there's not a lot going on with can.route. At its core, we're talking about an observable object that gives you access to read and write the URL, the address bar. Another way to maintain state. The biggest difference, we don't have the setup where you have signature then function. We just map the signature to an object, and then you can listen for changes on that object. So a small difference, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in how your app is responding to changes and how your app is maintaining state. Guys, any additional thoughts on can.route? Can.route is pretty simple. We'll put in. I'm going to put in a couple links. I know David had a couple talks, and I believe there was one other talk that Justin had talking about can.route internals that go really, really deep into how we built can.route, how can.route works, and David has a good talk on how we manage application state with can.route. So I'll put those links in this YouTube once I get this published here in a few minutes. As always, if you're a first-time listener, you can ask us questions. Let me double check. I don't see anything. Yeah. If you wanted to ask us questions live while we're doing these shows, it's all available. We're very accessible on Gitter. That's Gittr, and the room we're in is Bitovi/JS-training. You can pretty much message us around the clock all week there, but we're definitely there every Wednesday at noon Central Time. And I think that's it. You guys have any thoughts? Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the CanJS core team. We're all here in Chicago this week, catching up, having some good food. Otherwise, we will see everybody next week. Let me take a look at what we got on the calendar for next week. Next week should be pretty good. We're talking about progressively loaded applications, followed by Can Connect. Keep an eye on the calendar. We may push back Can Connect. I'm not sure of everyone's schedule, as that falls on December 23rd, depending on which of the team is not taking off that Wednesday for the holidays. Happy holidays, everybody, and we will see you guys next week.